Hello, and welcome to For the Love of Truth. I'm called Adrian. Legal maxims can be considered as unrebuttable presumptions. And if you want to learn more about how powerful these are, and to get a list of some of the most appropriate ones you can use for the position that we find ourselves in right now, with out of control so-called authority figures and apparent corruptions in the system, then this detailed, long discussion with my esteemed guest, Sui Generis, can provide you with some very powerful information. This is a simple and clear discussion and is easy to understand. There is no fluff in this discussion, just solid information. And it is not a theoretical philosophical discussion, nor does it contain hyperbole. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. And as always, you are amazing. And I'm looking forward to speaking to you in the next episode. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.
Where were we? But this attention span question that
Yes.
people are getting shorter and shorter.
It's shocking.
Messages.
They're also asking for one of the other things I've noticed, which is very concerning, I think, is that they read the headline and they don't read the context or the article behind it.
Yeah, and sometimes the article says exactly the opposite than what the first impression from that's like classic propaganda.
Yeah.
So you just make a statement, people skim over it and fill in the blanks from their own head. Like you create the impression that people just fill in the obvious quick answer, and then they don't even read the article, which actually implies something totally different. And then the publisher can say that we didn't say anything like that. I've been discussing actually this topic recently, privately a lot. And the way I see it is that, you've probably read all these propaganda books. So, the way it works. Yeah. So there's a couple of things. First of all, most of the people don't realize that propaganda is always directed to the people in the home country. It has nothing, it's not a cross-border endeavor. It's internal, always. And that's the first thing that people get wrong. And when you get that wrong, you talk about propaganda from some other country directed towards people in your country. And that's total BS, because it always originates internally and it's always directed towards the people in the home country. That's the way it works. That's what it means. And what is it? Why is it done? It's information put in to the people's, processing, put into people's brains for processing, where the outcome of that process, the intended or the sought out outcome, is a physical reality action.
Yeah.
People don't give a fuck about what you think, but if they can make you do something and I believe that what you're doing is the right thing to do, well, that's why you do stuff. You think that you have to do something or that it's the right thing to do. But you have to get that mental process in place first, right? That's why it's happening. And then the outcome sought is a physical action to get you to actually do something. And that's where you trip, because you're doing it. You are the one then coming to the conclusion that this action is the right thing, and that leads you to be at the end of the day, the vulnerable one and the one with the blame for any outcome of that action.
Yeah, because you took it.
You took it. You actually did something. Words don't hurt, but it's the action that is sought. And if you get everybody to parrot these ideas to each other, then obviously it reinforces the idea that this course of action is the correct one. We've seen monstrous examples of that, of course, over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
And if you have more consolidated media, like in a small country like Finland, it's totally out of control. People use the same exact phrases. And it's like, what the fuck? You don't even try to rephrase it. People would use the same exact sentences.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's outrageous. And also you would throw in the usual stuff like terms that don't have any meaning. Like they're really good at inventing words that just don't exist in the dictionary, but they sound like, when you hear the word, and it's usually like, what do you call it? Where you have when you tie in multiple words. What do you call it? There's an English term for that.
Oh, I know what you mean. I can't think of the word.
Let me check. It's not a word I use a lot in English.
Well, I think there's another challenge as well, is that people don't want to feel stupid, so they don't question what they're told.
Compound word.
Compound, yeah.
Yeah, or compound. Yeah, so these guys would invent compound words that sound like something because of the individual words in them. But those words do not exist in the dictionary, and therefore they have no meaning. So the one who uses them is the only one who can define the intended meaning of it, because it's a term of art, right?
Yeah.
Now the president of Finland is one of the best ones in this. So he's just throwing out terms that don't mean anything. It's amazing. Of course, he's a lawyer and has been a head of state for a long time. So really good examples.
Does he appreciate your letters you send him?
Oh, I don't know.
I suspect not.
Maybe he should. So that's a great way to get into the topic, by the way, because when we have this evidence now, and with the amount of letters and communications we've had with some people answering and some people not answering to these letters, the question really is that, okay, so why don't you answer? Because the evidence is it's reasonable, rational, logical, and we can really have this in-depth conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But where do you have it? And with who do you have it? So the lower levels of the machine, of course, as expected, would have no clue. I don't think these guys have any idea. But what is surprising is that even the higher levels, and I've said this in previous talks, even in the higher levels, there might be a situation, if you look at these guys and you look at their background and their career, that they actually don't get it, because they've been in that kind of a mode where I don't know how they are educated or trained or oriented into their positions, but I doubt that they have spent multiple years digging into etymology of words and their legal meanings, because they just didn't have the time to do that, right? So they might know something. So maybe this is compartmentalized. So they know something that is relevant for them and their positions and their departments, and they know some of the key words that you can or cannot use. And then if they start feeling that, okay, there's something that I don't get, then they would always refer it to somebody who is like their legal expert in this subject matter. And I've seen that happening with the letters. And it even happened, remember that the Dreamhouse document?
Yes, I do.
So that one I sent to one of the EU commissioners.
Mm-hmm.
And the reply, did we talk about this? The reply was that she doesn't have competence to answer it.
I don't think we talked about it. I remember the document because I did a narration of it, didn't I?
Yeah, yeah. And so she referred it to like a subject matter specialist, and then he replied directly to me. But he had the email from the commissioner in the email, like copied in it.
Yeah.
So I could see how the discussion went there internally.
How revealing.
Yeah. So okay. So what does that mean? So you have someone in a position like that, which is, let's say, a position of a trustee. Let's just call it that. And then they say that I can't handle this. You know, I need I need advice from someone who can understand what this guy is saying, or what are the implications, perhaps. You know, I bet she could read the letter. You know, in terms of, you know, it's English, right?
Yep.
But then the question became, well, this sounds like this might have an implication on what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone else, you know, jumps in and gives me, you know, like basically a bullshit answer. But it was nice answer, but it wasn't answering anything.
Sounds like he's been trained by a
Actually, the guy who was called to answer that said thank you, that this was interesting, and this was an, you know, interesting information, and we have to take this. We have to think about this. That's kind of what was the reply. But if the subject matter expert replies like that, there can be two things. Either he's like, okay, this has an implication to us, so we need to cover up something again, you know, delete some words from these dictionaries, whatever it is they do. It's something that they've done many times after these letters.
Dictionaries are getting thinner.
Yeah, even the EU term bank.
Yes.
I recently discovered that they deleted the Born Alive.
Yes. Yeah, I noticed that after I put links to it, and the links have gone.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, because it serves their interest for people not to know about it.
Yeah, it's like the core term of
Yeah.
how this fictional BS imaginary sphere, you know, realm is created.
Yeah.
It's a medical legal term.
Yep.
Right at the port of entry.
Yeah.
Mm. And then somebody starts asking, how do you define this? Like, really exactly like in real life. And what's the response? You start deleting these entries in these dictionaries.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Burning of the books?
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yeah, rewriting the narrative.
Yeah. So even that implies that all this bullshit is actually happening.
Yeah.
And
Otherwise,
you
why bother?
cannot explain yourself. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
And okay, let's get back to this. So basically, we approach people in pretty high positions, and their reaction is silence, kind of semi-arrogant, dismissive replies.
Yeah.
And you know, burning of books.
Yeah.
What does that imply in itself? They don't. Do you need to say anything like that after that?
Nope.
Is it? It's like this guy. He's originally from Finland. This super weird character. This what is his name? Peter Nygård, who just got sentenced to jail for some sexual misconduct. So in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the people like that. So they still there in front of the jury. They're like, no, I did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Right. That's the mentality. So why is that? Is it because you don't know? No, probably not. You know what you've been doing. You've probably been in these kinds of conversations. And now I'm not talking about Peter Nygård anymore. I'm talking about these officials. So like, okay, you're in this system, you know that there's something funky. Maybe you know some of it, maybe you don't. I doubt that you know all of it. Then what is it? What is it? Is it like you gradually went so far in that swamp that you just know that there's no way you can walk out of it and explain yourself?
Mm-hmm.
It just won't fly that you didn't know because there's just too much of it. So what's your reaction then? You just cave in and you just start deleting entries in a fucking dictionary.
Yeah, cover your tracks.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The funniest thing is that these when we start dealing with questions like this, the people don't even try to explain themselves. So let's just start. You can go. We've had these conversations. You know, you can analyze the documentation and these official forms and papers and how these presumptions come about. You can have a normal analytical conversation about them. No problem. Using very simple tools like a dictionary and some principles of law, such as, you know, what was your intention with this word? Who chose this word to be used in this document, like the born alive? Who came up with that term, and why did you choose that term to be in this form? And by the way, why did everybody in different countries have that same term in these same documents? So who decided that? If they are compatible with each other and they are interlinked in the EU term bank, it means that somebody agreed that that specific term has to be interchangeable between different countries. So where was that who had that discussion? Who made the decision?
They're not going to be questions they want to answer.
I've asked that many times. They just totally avoid that. They just totally avoid that. So, and of course, one of the main questions that the church left unanswered was that who signed the notification of the child to the population register? Because they said that yes, the church signed it, and yes, it's the church owns the document. They even said that. So okay, so you have made a document. It's your document. You signed it, and then that becomes that's the breeder document for the population register entry. Then you turn to me and start yelling that I have to identify as that. What is this? Like, and then I ask, well, who created that document? Who chose the terms and words, and who signed it? Because it's signed by you. I don't know. It's impossible to find out.
What?
Yeah, they said it's impossible to find out who signed it.
Without answering that question, you just have to be a good boy and behave.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's childish. That's ridiculous, right? That's we can have this conversation analytically and, you know, objectively. So what kind of an answer is that? It's impossible. What you don't know who works for you?
There has to be an audit trail that, you know, who did what, when, and how.
Well, they probably threw that audit trail into the crematorium, the way they throw the physical material in it,
Yes, quite.
and then sprinkle it into the memory grove.
Nicely put.
Yeah. Well, that's what actually happens.
Yeah.
That's why they say that people's roots are in the ground
I was reading that
of
this
their
morning.
home country.
Yep, absolutely.
Mm.
Yet again, clues everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. When you can see what the terms actually mean. So somebody's putting out these terms, and they're exactly like that always. Why would you use that term like repeatedly, exactly like that? So some people know how this runs, and still, yet, when you confront the question, because you understand the terms, and you can see how this structure operates, then you get this silence and ridiculous nonsense explanations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the same guys claim to operate the venues where these kinds of discussions should be discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And there, what I mean is, of course, the courts.
Yes.
Right. So this is obviously wrong. We can take any angle to this, from Palermo protocols to, whatever you want, tort law. So then you go to the same guys, the same organization, in their venues, and have this. Is that the right venue? That's like.
Yeah, I could see just a very slight conflict of interest there.
Exactly. So do you see how it's funny, because that's where most people fail or they feel like that's where the overwhelming feeling comes to most people. They drop the ball and they say, well, what can you do? But if you do that, you don't realize that the inherent status never went away.
No.
And if you take that seriously, then you can see that all of the structure is basically a derivative of the assumption that you gave up your status.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way they can operate that system. But let's take this further. What happens when people realize that, wait a minute, you are operating these venues on the assumption that we just gave away our status?
Mm-hmm.
So let's back up there and let's rebut that presumption. I did not do that, and I can prove it. So where's the venue now? Whose venue are we in now?
Yours.
Right. We're not quite there with the discussion. I've tried to push this
Mm-hmm.
A few times, but it's really difficult for people to take the step out of that. Of course, because everything has been hammered into our heads over the past decades.
Mm-hmm.
And probably like 2 generations, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that it's like problem of actually only 2 generations.
Yeah.
Everything points to that.
I mean, you're also up against people's belief. They believe that the courts have all these power. They believe in the rule of law and all the rest of it. So their beliefs have been manipulated. So a lot of their behavior is going to be influenced by that.
Yeah, they just take it. Oh, this term, I love it. Take it for granted.
It's dangerous.
Isn't it? Grant. Well, who granted and what?
Yep.
And what specific biological material is taken for granted? And is it the grant creating a trust? It's so disgusting. So basically, people just take it as something. They never. It's the hard part is that how can people be so schizophrenic that they, at the same time, they must realize that people existed before government, and therefore the power of the government comes from the people.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It has to come from someone, and there's a great maxim on that we're going to talk about. But that realization has been completely wiped out.
Yeah.
It's like we have this machine, and the machine says you do this, and if you don't comply, then you're gonna have to go to this theater.
Yeah.
and you have no say in it. You should be afraid. And nobody thinks that, wait a minute, like even if you look at what's happening in the world, every year new countries are created.
Mm-hmm.
How does that happen?
Well, exactly. That's that question there. How does that happen? Is so useful in examining things.
Yeah. So there is a mechanism, and okay. So what happens when there are entirely new states being created,
Mm-hmm.
and then there are all these kinds of conflicts where maybe some states come about and some states disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And in international law, you even have a lot of examples where you have states that kind of go into hibernation. So basically, the state as a structure still exists, but the people who used to be part of that state just flip to something else.
That's
So what
interesting.
is that mechanism actually?
Yeah.
What is being done there? Well, of course, Finland is a perfect example of that in 1917,
Okay.
being a kind of like a province of the Imperial Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this time of turbulence, and out came a republic, right?
Mm.
Now, who actually created that? That's a question that the Finnish people should ask themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Who decided on that form of government and how?
Yes.
Okay, but let's not get into that today.
No, we'll have that discussion another time.
Yeah, so what I said is like this blanket is pulled over the eyes and ears of a couple of generations.
Yeah.
So if we just use that 1917, it's kind of like a pretty close benchmark to the timeline anyways.
Yeah.
In terms of how international law developed and all these wars and all that. And but then when you start looking into the older law books or even current law books, they all refer to the topic of today, which is the maxims.
Mm-hmm.
And what are those maxims then?
Mm-hmm.
So like,
Well, could we start
why
by
don't
defining
people?
what a maxim is?
Yeah, exactly. What is it? So should we start with Sir William Blackstone?
Yes.
Somewhat like axioms in geometry.
Hmm.
Okay, so what's an axiom? There's in Merriam 3 different meanings for it. A statement accepted as true as the basis for argument or inference. 2, an established rule or principle, or a self-evident truth. Self-evident truth. It's like something that you don't need to argue about this, except if you're starting to create new meanings for words. How do you argue then if you don't know what the other guy is saying? But self-evident truth has to link to reality and logic,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Cannot be anything else. And the third one is a maxim is widely accepted on its intrinsic merit. Intrinsic is a funny word because intrinsic means originating from an organ. So everything goes back to the organ always.
Always. All roads lead there.
Yeah. So anyways, it's a self-evident truth. It's like something that you don't have to argue.
Yeah.
And then Sir Edward Coke, a maxim is so called because its dignity is chiefest and its authority the most certain, and because it is universally approved by all.
Mm-hmm.
So these maxims, yeah. So if it's said, well, let's go forward. Black's Law. I'm using first edition here. This is a first edition, page 762. An established principle or proposition, a principle of law universally admitted as being a correct statement of the law or as agreeable to natural reason. Natural reason. Yeah, of course, if everybody's insane, there's no natural reason in the room, right?
Yes.
But if someone is able to have natural reasoning, to do some natural reasoning, then these things matter.
Mm.
Koch defines a maxim to be conclusion of reason and says that it is so called. Quite okay. But then this, yeah. Well, then there's the maxim of the in Latin, which was the one that we all were, or I already cited before.
Mm-hmm.
So then, okay, where do you find these maxims? They are everywhere in the case law, in law books.
Mm-hmm.
Black's Law, Bouvier's, all these different law books. They list these maxims. Guide to Latin in International Law. All these books, they would list these maxims, and it's not like one set of them. These are all over the place, and there are like collections of them. And I guess the
You
people
referred
who
to
have
these as unrebuttable presumptions, didn't you?
yeah. So if you well, isn't the presumption isn't that what we just saw that these are described as axioms in geometry,
Mm-hmm.
Universally approved,
Yes.
agreeable to natural reason.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a statement or a principle that you have to presume, or if you're not presuming it, the other way to say it is that it's like that.
Yeah.
But you can also say it differently if you want to state that everything is an assumption or presumption.
Mm-hmm.
Then it would be an unrebuttable presumption because by definition you cannot argue against it.
Yeah.
Now when you read about presumptions in law, it's very fluffy area. So you get into this rebuttable presumptions and unrebuttable presumptions.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it works is that, let's look at like in evidence. So first of all, where do you present evidence? In courts? And courts are previously or even today called a tribunal of truth. So you're trying to find out what actually happened through presentation of evidence of which indicates that something happened. Then you start when the story starts to develop in people's heads, be it the judge or the jury, you have to assume some things, and then you look at the evidence and it implies something, right?
Yeah.
So it's facts, intentions, assumptions, presumptions. Now, in modern law of evidence, Oxford University Press, page 99, where a presumption operates, a certain conclusion may or must be drawn by the court in the absence of evidence in rebuttal. So you have a presumption because you're filling in the blanks, right? You're trying to create a picture of what actually happened.
Yeah.
If there is no evidence showing otherwise, you have to draw the conclusion from those presumptions. So it's kind of easy to see, or let's say it this way: the court has to make a decision, and they have to look at the evidence.
Yeah.
And they have to come to a conclusion, and whatever the evidence shows, that's kind of what we're going towards.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, what kind of evidence can you present? And if the evidence is linked to these presumptions, then you have to pay attention to this part, that if there is no evidence in rebuttal of a presumption, then it applies. And okay, then you can look at what the identity is in courts. the identity is the first presumption there, isn't it?
Yes.
Because the registered person is invited into that room.
Mm-hmm.
And that presumption arises from the population register entry or birth certificate, if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And then they need evidence in the courtroom that there is someone who acts in that capacity. And when they ask, are you this and this guy? Someone says, yes. Okay, that's it. The evidence is there. So you have a presumption from the documentation from the population register, and you have oral evidence in court about this guy identifying as this character.
Yes.
And so the question is how you should be rebutting that presumption before you even get in there.
Mm-hmm.
Or before the question is asked, or while the question is asked, by the way. You can say, well who do you mean? Who are you comparing me to? What's your sort of base proposition here?
Yep.
Where did you get that name from? Well, the way they get the name is that, of course, they take just basically population register entry.
Mm-hmm.
That's the presumption.
Yeah.
There has to be a presumption.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the funniest thing. One of the people looking into this, who's also been part of these discussions here on the servers. So he's basically, he has these great examples. He went in and said, or I don't remember if it was him or some of his friends, and said, well, to these officials that, hey, I'm here, so can you identify me, please? So if you have the register entry there, so go ahead, identify me if you know better. So if you cannot, then obviously the only one who knows who I am is me. I don't need your papers for that. By the way, you created them, and the church just said that it's their paperwork, not mine, or not my parents. So it's self-evident that you created that character because it's all your paperwork.
Yeah.
Even without going into the details of what the paperwork implies and how it shows the misappropriation of the organ.
Yeah.
We don't even need to go there because this is logical in itself.
Yeah.
You have created something and you cannot identify me as it. You need me to identify myself as it. Just lay it out like that.
Yeah. How good's that?
Yeah. And if you start flashing these cards, they immediately presume that, yeah, you're doing it because you are identifying as that character. That's why you carry the card. That's why you show it.
Yep.
But even that doesn't
Which is
matter
why
because
I never carry any ID or anything.
Yeah, well, I don't think it makes a big difference because they're gonna make that presumption anyways. Their evidence is just weaker.
Yes.
But if you all the time rebut that presumption, even if you have a document like that, and you can say, yeah, I this kind of a document has been given to me, but I know that it's not created by me. It doesn't identify me, and I don't identify as it.
Mm-hmm.
Just take that on your record as a statement from me while you do whatever you do with that fucking document.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes a competition of evidence, see?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is accumulation of evidence.
Yeah.
So then if they are making all these assumptions and presumptions based on your conduct or your actions or your words
Or your silence.
or your silence, exactly. So then you can do the same thing, of course, but you just have to catch it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you don't catch it, and it's really difficult to catch all of them because they just invent them on the fly. So what the other method is to put your rebuttal in all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And rebuttal of what? Rebuttal of the identity. It's because the identity creates the rights or the presumption of the rights, which is in reality limitation of rights,
Yes.
abrogation of rights.
Mm-hmm.
But if you keep on rebutting that identity question and saying, all of this other stuff requires that, so that's the first thing we need to discuss, the identity. Because if you just take that identity, you force the identity to be, or for me to be that identity.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I'm under duress right there.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, you ignore my evidence. And if you have other evidence, I'm happy to look into it because I already have. I've already rebutted it. And by the way, I made everybody also aware that the evidence, the way they use it, doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And the only response is you refuse to have that rational conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So you're afraid of the implications. Okay. So, but one of the things when you look at it this way, you put in evidence,
Mm-hmm.
then, and you throw in assumptions and presumptions. So isn't that kind of like, it sounds like a definition of a conversation you're having with a government official?
Yes.
So they're trying to get you to say something so that they can draw the conclusion or make an assumption.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's use the same method.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use the same method and let's create that. Let's put it on the record all the time. Okay, they can manipulate their record. They can, it's like they can write whatever. They can. There's even a term for that, verbaling. So if you look that term up, it's basically like changing a testimony.
Mm.
So they can do all that stuff. So
Yeah.
what we have to be able to do is to always go back with the reality,
Mm-hmm.
to see where they're making the assumption, understand the implications, and point out that you're talking bullshit. That's that's not reality. That's a fictional idea.
Yeah.
But talking about a fiction it gets a little bit out there,
Yeah.
a little bit too much in my opinion. I'd rather talk about evidence and presumptions because that has more grip.
Yes.
And it has more implications to them.
Yeah.
They are also people, and you're putting in false evidence. Did you know that this is wrong? If you did, it's even worse for you.
Yes.
If you didn't, it's your fucking liability to look into that.
Yes.
Not mine.
Yes.
It's your system. I'm pointing out a flaw in it. Look into it.
Yeah. And if they don't, they have a liability problem.
Exactly. And these are the types of maxims that I like the most. And then you can throw in these maxims.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is exactly that. So I made some really quick notes here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if the Latin. Do we even need to read this in Latin? But this is of
If
course
you can, I can't.
yeah, not perfectly, but
Yeah.
for some reason I remember these better from the Latin wording.
Well, I think the Latin's important, isn't it? Because being a dead language, it's not been changed. So the meaning stays with what the meaning stays.
Yeah, although there are different ways to write those. There are different ways to word those, and some of these changes are pointed out in the law books, but it doesn't change the actual meaning of the. Usually, it doesn't change the point of the maxim.
Sure.
Okay, so the core that we already touched here is that no one can transfer more rights to another than he himself has.
Yes.
So people existed before government, and government does not get any more authority from any fictional source except the people. And if there's one guy on one island and he forms a government, all the powers come from that guy. If there's
Yeah.
two, they can either form one government or two, right?
A coalition.
Or a coalition, yeah. So where does that power come from? And the answer I got from the Department of Justice when I grilled on that, they so first of all, the director replied himself. Started by saying, "I don't usually reply to these kinds of questions, but I'll take this."
Okay.
And then he, because my question was, I don't have it here in front of me, but approximately the point was this. I said that, you have just sent out voting cards, like this voter, what is it called? Voter card or voter registration cards.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Those are all addressed to the registered persons, the citizens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, according to the Constitution, the powers that you are asking the people to exercise belong to the people and not to the citizens. So if a citizen walks in with this paper and identifies as that person, goes in voting, they don't have the powers that you're asking them to exercise.
Yeah.
So how does this work? Well, obviously, the guy replied. First of all, he took it like probably off the desk of somebody who started asking questions internally. Like, shut the fuck up, never look at this again, I'll take it.
Yeah.
And then he replies me and says along the lines that, yeah, so I'll take this. This is, unusual, but I'll take this. And then he says, the people, as is referred to in the Constitution, means people as whole. Okay, so we know what that means.
Yeah.
People as whole means, undivided self. Man and, life, limb, liberty, and property. It's my limb, man. It's not yours.
Yep.
Although somebody ripped it off. So people as whole, and he tries to slide with the definition of the word people, which is usually interpreted as a group of people. But people as whole can mean each one of us as a whole man, including everything that was created, including the organ. So he says that the people that is referred to in the Constitution is an abstract term. And what you are getting into with this question is a theoretical philosophical question.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was his reply. It's a philosophical theory. So what I don't remember if I probably didn't even answer that, but I was joking about it in the chat. The guy, what the hell? Well, we're talking about the Constitution of their republic, and the way it works. And he says this is law, right? This is law. It's in the law books. And your reply that it's theoretical, philosophical, entertaining discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I could say the same thing about any law then.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, but that's theoretical philosophy, hey man.
I might try that actually.
Well, yeah, I definitely can try it because I can show that this I got the same reply from the Department of Justice. They take it as theoretical philosophy.
Yeah, so I will.
It's their words, not mine.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's just have a theoretical philosophical discussion here. Who cares about the fucking Constitution? It's just philosophy.
He's not the brightest lamp on the tree then, is he?
Well, he's probably pretty bright. But he seems like he's cornered.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
So what can you reply to that? What would you reply if you're in a position like that? Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Except I could never be in that position.
Send a bullshit answer
Yeah.
quickly, cite some philosophy, and then start deleting the entries in the dictionaries. That's the modus operandi.
Yeah.
It's amazing that people they are smart people. That guy is not stupid.
They can't be a fool.
Why can't you talk about this thing? Obviously, I lay it out for you in detail. We can have a conversation. You can see that I know this.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's just that's just philosophy, theoretical philosophy. It's like talking. It's like theory of relativity.
Yeah.
They immediately jump into that realm of depends. Everything is like whoa out there, and it's just a warp of time space continuum, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same trick.
Yeah. Well, you've passed him a hot potato. He doesn't want to hold on to it.
Yeah, you change the subject. I'm talking about law, which has implications. And you immediately try to make this a philosophical conversation, which does not have legal consequences. You're dodging.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So smart people like that, in high positions like that, are using ridiculous tactics like this over and over and over again. What does that imply? What does that evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we've only got one maxim in so far. I don't have this in any logical sequence because I kind of just like threw them in my notes. And I've used these. I took.
I'd like to say to people listening that I thought these were so important when I read them on the Discord server that I took the time to write them down, and I read them many times a week, so they're in my mind being kind of steeping, and I'm cogitating on them because they're absolutely critical, I think.
They are. Give me 1 second.
Hmm?
Yeah, so we went through the no one can transfer more rights or power. Nemo plus juris transfere ad alium potest quam ipse habet. So the power comes from someone. The power that they assume they have inherently. Well, inherently, yeah, originates from the organ. Whose organ? Mine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, primus in tempore potior in jure. First in time, greater in right. There are obvious implications to that, things that like are more normal, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make a claim or something, and then who was the first one to start some process or whatever. But the big implication is that I existed before your jurisdiction started to apply.
Yeah.
I was there before the record entry was created.
Yeah.
I existed before that. There's no question about it. It's a self-evident truth. Now you created that birthday, which distorts this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have the organ. I did.
Yeah.
And I have material evidence of that fact in the middle of my belly.
Yeah.
It's a scar. And scar is evidence, obviously, material evidence. Okay. Well, this is kind of logical. Ex nihilo nihil fit. A maxim meaning that legal rights cannot arise from an invalid or illegitimate source. So you just took the organ, and now you say the organ is like a fraction of a bundle of organs, which is your philosophical theoretical conception of people as an abstract entity.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. It's each and every one of us as a whole, not as sliced up wreckage,
Yeah.
or whatever term you want to use, domesticated animal or whatever, dog on a leash.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that.
No.
I'm getting a bit pissed off here. Every time you start reading this, you get like,
Oh yeah,
like every one of these you can throw back at them and say these are unrebuttable. presumptions. You need to explain yourself according to this. If I apply these standards, these maxims into the question of where the fuck is my organ, okay, what happened to it? Because the powers that arise from it are mine, not yours.
Yep.
You can do your paperwork, you can burn the organ, whatever, sprinkle it. The powers are still mine.
Yeah.
The evidence is still there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, impossibilium nulla obligatio est. It's almost English. The impossible is not a legal obligation. And, Kurt would say, if I need to identify as that, it would mean that I'm committing a suicide.
Mm.
That's impossible. And by the way, I'm here, I'm living, breathing. I don't need the physical organ. So that's not a problem. If you want to get rid of the biological waste, get rid of it, but it has no other implication.
Yeah.
It doesn't change my rights. See?
Mm-hmm.
I park my bicycle next to the garbage can, and then the garbage guy comes over, takes the garbage, and thinks that the bike is also supposed to be thrown away.
Yeah.
Right? Whose bike is it?
Yours.
Exactly. Wait a minute. Our paperwork implies that you threw it away. No, I parked it there.
Yeah.
Joten tässä lex neminem cogita vana seu impossibilia. The law compels no one towards vain or impossible things. You're trying to compel me to play a game, which is both vain and impossible.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Okay, I'll skip a few of these because these are a bit. Maybe we can come back to these later.
Yeah.
I love this one. Sub lato fundamento cadit opus.
Yes.
Upon removal of the foundation, the work collapses.
Yeah.
So you can talk about it both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who's removing the foundation? You are trying to remove my foundation and make me collapse. Well, what is your creation based on? The foundation that you think you can administer, but you can't. Your work collapses with that.
Yes.
With that rebuttal, or the presumption, or the rebuttal of that presumption that you can do that. Right? Let's get back to the one that we've discussed. What is a regency?
Yes.
Right? You're assuming that nobody's home, anybody home. Right? You're assuming, and therefore you say that, well, I'm just, I have these authorities because obviously the king is away.
Yeah.
Well, is he? Prove it, because I'm here.
Yep.
What the hell are you talking about?
I don't think people still recognize that all the governments are acting as a regency because of that. And that's where they're getting their implied power from.
Well said. That's it. That's the only way they can have an implied power like that.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody actually went in. They didn't send the letters to the Ministry of Department of Justice. Didn't send the letters to the people asking them to come in the capacity of people and delegate their powers to the government.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that. They could have, and then they would see how many comes up and says, yeah, here, take it,
Yeah. Why is only one person
and
implied?
Yeah. Or send both. Send 2 letters.
Yeah.
Why not? Try which one is more interesting for people. Ex nihilo nihil fit. Out of nothing is created. They don't have anything. The only thing they have is a narrative which pushes us into an idea that we have to comply.
Yeah.
Because we don't know that the power comes from us. And you can take it back anytime, or you don't even need to take it back because you have it all the time.
Yes.
So what we started from was the propaganda. It's like, how did you create a physical effect, a physical action by using information?
Yeah.
Well, this is exactly what it is.
Yeah.
That voter card is exactly that.
Yep.
You create paperwork which becomes part of the evidence, and it creates the presumption that these guys have given up their rights.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make them act, you make them walk in and identify as perfecting that presumption.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can say, well, dude, what other conclusion can you draw from that? What other conclusion can you? Nobody came here and said, what the hell is this? Except I did. I sent it back to them and said, this is ridiculous. The people who walk, they don't have the power. The citizens don't have that power. So what is this, theater? Yeah, of course it's theater, because then it creates the surroundings and the information and the perceptions that, yeah, this is how it works. And I get to say my word, you know?
Yeah, I missed some of that, but I'll pick it up from the recording you sent me.
Yeah, I don't remember which one I talked about. It might be one of some of the. I don't remember specifically, but the point is the same, right? Where were we? Yeah, okay. Expressionius, alteris. Yeah, expression of one thing excludes the other. So if you identify as a citizen, then you're acting in that capacity. You can't act in two capacities at the same time. And they realize the system, the way it's built, it respects this maxim. But they know, obviously, that they cannot ultimately take that power away. And that's why they have to have evidence where you imply your status to be something else than what it actually is before they can clamp on you. Expressio unius, exclusio alterius. That's what the show me your ID is about.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's constructed like that because they know that those powers are there forever. They are with you forever.
Yeah.
So they have to create a physical life action which implies that you don't exercise those powers. Now, those powers are so important that if you don't exercise them, then they can say, well, we have the paperwork ready, we'll take care of it, we'll be the regency. Right? You see how that works?
Yeah, and it's very simple too, really.
Yeah. But this whole maxim and the way it works in practice implies that they can never take away those rights. It's not like identify once. You showed your driver's license at the, somewhere, and then, well, now forever, you're just a fucking slave. We can beat you up. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that, because let's do a little thought experiment. Whatever turmoil happens, somehow we are somewhere. Let's say we're abroad somewhere, on a vacation, and then there's huge turmoil in some place, and then some fighting and stuff, and then people start, the existing government falls, and then one thing leads to another, and we are there in the center of all of these happenings. And then there's a group of people who say, okay, let's form a new government, and by the way, you guys will run it. Okay, and then they do that, and then we do run it, right? Totally legitimate. Where did the powers come from? Think about it. Delegation, yeah, all the same delegation happens, but our status just gets shifted. So basically, think about it the other way around. Basically, what is this hierarchy, this civil status hierarchy? Is it somebody rising in the ranks, or is it everybody being pushed down or limited in their capacity to create that hierarchy?
It's the latter.
Yeah. And that's why they hate it, because it's competition. All of these guys are the same.
Yeah.
The communist mindset is always the same. They hate competition. But the problem is that, yeah, we're all here exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So where did the power come from again? Okay, let's move on. Okay, yeah, fictio sed veritate. Fictio is just another version of that. Fictio juris non est ubi veritas. There's no legal fiction where the truth is, where there is truth. So if you can demonstrate something that is actually real, the legal fictions, you don't have a need for legal fictions.
Yeah.
And if you have that classic book of L.M. Fuller, The Legal Fictions,
No,
you have that?
no, I'll get that.
It's a fantastic one. It explains why legal fictions exist. And it's like an excuse for the court to say that since we don't have any evidence of something, we just come up with shit that makes this logical.
That sounds like a deem.
yeah, deem. Yeah, that's it. They deem stuff.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the narrative doesn't work.
Yeah.
You have to be able to justify, but then okay, you justify it by saying, well, we had no idea about the reality on these and these questions.
Mm-hmm.
So we just assumed that this must be it to fill in the blanks, right?
Yeah.
And you justify it because of the coherence of the system. You have to have like a full audit trail. So you just punch in the numbers in the Excel. Here we go. Those are the numbers. And now it all makes sense. But if somebody shows what the reality is, obviously those assumptions fly out of the window right away. It's like, this is total nonsense. This is the truth.
Yeah.
And in this particular question, of course, what you are ultimately comparing is your navel to their paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
The mark on your belly. And then I love it because what I'm talking about is the next one. Pirata non mutat dominium. Piracy does not change ownership or dominion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can presume, you can create your own books, paperwork, evidence, whatever. But I have some material evidence here that we need to talk about. And by the way, in your documents, in your hospital documents, it's presented pretty accurately what actually happened. And then the document trail after that clearly and logically gives out the narrative of how this change of status happens. It's in your paperwork, and it fits into, it fits in perfectly. So who's having to explain himself? So, by the way, this was something that was posted on the server by a friend of mine. A pirate. Etymology of a pirate.
Okay.
A trier. It's a trier. Someone who attempts to steal unnoticed.
Oh. That's interesting.
Yeah. So if you don't protest and expose the piracy, you're presumed to you're implying, or you're presumed to imply, that you consent to it.
Yes.
It's crazy. Piracy. The fact that you're trying to make me give up those rights.
Yeah.
And what are you? What are you? You're being tried in court.
Yeah.
Right. And all that ship imagery in the courtroom.
Yeah.
Piracy.
Oh yeah.
We're pretty close here.
Did you see that little video I did of that courthouse in America?
It was a while back, right?
Yeah, a little one, just only tiny short one called Courtship, and it was using Google Earth to show
Yeah.
that it's actually the shape of a ship, and it's right in your face.
Yeah. So piracy. So a trier. You're being tried. Someone's attempting to steal your powers.
Yes.
And unnoticed. That's the test. Do you know who you are? You look at this evidence, Don't contemplate your own navel. Okay, and then here's the thing that we touched on previously. Idem facere nolle prohibere cum possis. It's the same thing to act and to refuse to prohibit when you can.
Yeah.
So these high offices who get these letters, the silence is your refusal to prohibit this shit from happening. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's an act. It's a legal act.
Yeah. And that then gives them liability because it's the same thing to, what is it? I forget the wording of it now, but basically it means if you don't do something about it, you're guilty of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the same thing to act and to refuse to prohibit
Yeah.
when you can.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So if you do not blow the whistle,
Yeah.
then you're part of it.
Even if you didn't create it yourself.
Yeah, and then of course these guys, I don't know what is this part of like them playing stupid, not replying, like I didn't get it, and by the way, I didn't find these terms in the dictionary because I just ordered somebody to delete them.
Yeah. And by the way, I was just doing my job.
Yeah, well that one flies well.
Yeah. Heard that one before.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the there is no mandate in connection with an immoral matter?
Yeah. I had it somewhere here.
Re turpis nullum mandatum est.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, what did I have here? And then there's another book which has a lot of these maxims. It doesn't have those. It doesn't have those Latin maxims.
Mm-hmm.
But this one is it's really small. It's like 100-pager.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a nice one because it has these maxims. They're all cited and the citations are there.
Yeah.
They point to the original books. And then these are like categorized.
Okay. What's the book called?
Maxims of Law, and it's compiled and edited by Charles A. Wiseman. You can get it off Amazon. Really good book. And it doesn't, there's no like discussion. It's just lists. It's like a list of maxims.
Mm-hmm.
So it has how many categories? 105 categories.
Okay.
And then each one has like, I don't know, like 20, 30 maxims. 20 maxims, something like that. And there are some great ones in that. So I just pulled out a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
These people have probably heard them, but like in under this is like I just went from the like alphabetically. So agreement under the agreement theme. When there's a disagreement in the substance, it appears that there is no acceptance. Right. So you can rebut the presumption of your acceptance by saying that we're not talking about the same thing here.
Yeah.
We don't agree on the substance of this document. Well, let's take the birth certificate, right? Or the population register entry. I don't agree on the substance of it because I know how it was created. It doesn't imply my status. There's no agreement to that. An agreement induced by fraud cannot stand. Oh, pretty clear.
Well, that's an interesting one because that applies to a lot of the stuff we witnessed going on with the mandates for masks and all the rest of it.
Yeah, but they are trying to defer it to, well, show me the fraud. You're the one who did it. And now they're saying nobody was forced, right?
Yep.
So there was no fraud.
That also then would tie back to the caveat emptor,
So the
wouldn't it?
basic, no, but basically, sorry, I interrupt, but I didn't hear what you said. But the what I was saying is that they are saying that the mind control is not fraud.
Right.
Isn't that the implication of that?
Mm-hmm.
But what did you say?
I'd said it ties in with the caveat emptor. You got to be aware of what you're doing,
Yeah.
what you're taking part in, what you're contracting to do.
Well, don't they have to pay attention to that also?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, but I didn't realize, and I didn't find the words, and right? This is right back at you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, this is one thing that I think many people seem to forget is, the burden of proof is on the one making the claim. They're making a claim. They have to prove it, and they can't.
yeah, and the problem is that also not enough people confront them with that question,
Mm-hmm.
because they just get statistically biased
Yeah.
and think that this is so weird that I don't even want to look at this, and it's easier to give it up to someone else or give it to your higher ups if it's one crazy guy sending letters, right?
Yeah.
But if there are 1,000, that is what I've been saying all along, is that if 1,000 people ask the same question from the population register or the church, internally they're going to be in big turmoil.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's going to be, what the fuck? Why don't we just answer these questions?
Yeah.
You can't sweep it under the rug anymore.
No.
There's no doubt that the rights of others cannot be prejudiced by private contracts. How's that for a maxim?
Yeah. I like that one.
Right? So okay. Do we even need to go to the social contract here?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Could you give me that one again? I just didn't write it all down. There's no doubt that the rights of others cannot be.
prejudiced by private contracts.
Thank you.
Okay. Ambiguity. In cases of ambiguity, such an interpretation should always be made that what is inconvenient and absurd may be avoided.
Mm.
Okay, inconvenient is a pretty technical term, but you want to look at the convenient and convenience and consistency.
Yeah.
But this says that what is inconvenient may be avoided, which means, of course, the same thing. You want to be convenient. You want everything to be convenient and consistent, which the whole man is. And absurdities must be avoided in interpretation. So that alone will rip apart their paperwork. Look at the paperwork. What are you implying? That I didn't have that organ? That I gave it away? No. Right? That's absurd.
Yeah.
Who came up with that bullshit?
Yeah.
This is it's like every one of these maxims. You just take it, and when you apply it to this particular question of the status and the origin of your status and the ownership of that evidence, that material, the organ, everything flips around. And these maxims become irrefutable presumptions, evidence against them. It puts the burden of proof on them.
Yeah. Which is where it has to be.
Yeah. And I wonder why these are used less and less, or they're using these in like totally different questions. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a huge amount of opportunities to use these kinds of questions and maxims, or use these kinds of maxims and approaches to questions that relate to this particular problem. The problem of their assumption about my rights and how it comes from the paperwork, which was created because the organ was ripped off of me. And now they can start saying that, yeah, okay, well, everybody who doesn't have that organ, they granted it, and then they just took it for granted that they have to run the regency, right?
You've got so many opportunities to poke all sorts of holes that they can't recover from.
Yeah, they haven't been able to answer any of this. Remember, this has been going on for years. No answers, except occasionally some answers, and then the answers become evidence because they imply things that they probably did not intend to imply. That's why the highest offices stay silent. They don't get trigger happy, answering, like trying to dismiss this guy. because they know that, this might imply something completely different.
Yeah, and if people haven't listened to our other discussions, this is not theoretical. This is stuff you've been doing for years now.
Yeah. It's not. This is not theoretical philosophy.
Nice.
this is this is this is official. This is diplomatic communication, and totally peaceful.
As it must be, because they want to engineer it into a conflict, then they can start to take action against you.
Yeah, and the conflict, those kinds of actions are provoked, and that's exactly, again, we started by pump in information that makes people take action that then becomes unjustifiable, right? That's the way to make them trip. They take the action. So if you start taking violent action because they did something like this, you just fell yourself. That's not the way to deal with this, because you don't seem to realize that nothing actually was taken from you. You have the powers. So, and when you have the powers, you should act diplomatically because you're a diplomat.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be tricky in the early days when you feel so affronted and angry and annoyed about all this, but you can work through that. I certainly had to.
It takes some time, yeah. As with a lot of things, that's how people learn, I guess. It's better to take a couple of deep breaths and count to 10 and all that stuff, and to think about it before you start, getting triggered.
Yeah, or getting trigger happy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's the easiest way for them to turn this against people again. It's like that's then, and that the justification for that is obviously immediately the that you're acting dangerously towards others, and then that justifies defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot better to be proactive, really dry and analytical, but completely transparent and open about this.
Yeah.
And just point out the the flaws in logic of their claims. What's what would be a better option? And then when you start realizing the actual position you're in, then so there's one more thing. I've said it a couple of times, but if you don't act like that, then you imply that you don't act in that capacity.
Yeah.
They talk about it as a I guess it's best described in when you read about acts of what acts of state are. So basically, if a president or head of state wants to act in the capacity in that if you have to specifically act in the capacity of the state for it to be a sovereign act.
Right. A behavioral protocol then.
Yeah. So, and basically that by default requires diplomacy. Now people can have, of course, people will kick and scream and have their own interpretations if you do something that starts having bigger implications.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't take away that requirement for you to act like that. And what is diplomacy? It's basically saying that, look, we need to figure this, we need to talk this through peacefully. And if you refuse, crazy people can refuse to talk about it and take it, do whatever to avoid that discussion, even resort to violence. But who's going to do it? Right? Who's going to start it? These are the usual questions. Who's going to get provoked to the or cornered to the point that you just don't see any other options because you refuse to accept the reality.
Yeah. Which is a definition
It's
of
amazing,
insanity, isn't it?
No, oh yeah. Good point. Good point.
Shall we draw a line under it there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do that.
And I could certainly, I would love to carry on talking with you, but I think for the purposes of this particular episode, I think this would be a really good kind of cut point. And, you know, a huge thank you to you once again for sharing all that knowledge and information in a very amusing and entertaining way as well.
Yeah, this was fun. I was, um, it was funny feeling before this conversation because I wasn't, my notes were a bit all over the place and we haven't been talking for a while. So I didn't have much expectations, but I love this topic because when you start talking about it and reflecting, it just gets you going.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely fascinating.
Absolute pleasure again. Yeah.
But likewise, I really enjoyed it, and
Likewise. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to another discussion soon. I'm going to get this all edited up. If you would send me the audio recording, that would be great because there's a couple of times it cut out for a minute or two, so I missed some of it.
Okay. I can do that. I'll stop it now, the recording. How is it that question applies to every legal angle you take? How can it be? It cannot be irrelevant because you can see, if you know the definitions of words, you can see how this question links to every legal question you discuss. It's amazing. It's the only thing. This is the Holy Grail, right? It takes some self-study to find the proper and correct and, right approach with this. Because it's so different from the reality where we've all been, like the fake reality. Suddenly you start seeing what the world really is about, and it is overwhelming. But you have to deal with it. Yeah. You have to repeatedly come to the question that, well, isn't this exactly the point? Isn't this the most positive outcome, right? And after that huge amount of reflection, you can see that the reality as it actually is totally, it's like the opposite of the misery and shit that we've been going through.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion as much as we did. If you'd like to be kept up to date with new content, ideas and thoughts that I put on the website, please visit fortheloveoftruth.co.uk, and there's an option there if you want to subscribe to the newsletter so that I will periodically email you with updates of new content placed there.